Welcome to Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense, and I'm Rudy Giuliani. And we have another episode for you of Common Sense. And this one is going to focus on this whole issue about whether the Hunter Biden computer and the Hunter Biden hard drive, which I obtained in the early fall of 2020 from Mac Isaacs and Bob Costello, whether it's legitimate or not, and when was it figured out that it was legitimate? Very recently, there was a item in Politico saying that in a book written about the Biden campaign by what I know to be a very left-wing author, he was able to corroborate, verify, and demonstrate that one of the very incriminating emails, the one I think involving the 10% to the big guy, which was a Chinese communist contract for $30 million a year, they like to leave that out, that was clearly and without any doubt a Hunter Biden email. And that suggested that the entire hard drive was Hunter Biden's and the entire computer was Hunter Biden's, and that all of the texts on it are legitimate. Although then when they took a little heat from the left wing for that, they said, well, it doesn't suggest maybe some things could have been slipped in by Russians. And now it's hard to find on their site. Remember, Politico a year ago said it was Russian disinformation and basically accused me of being a Russian agent. Liars. Russian agent. Well, let's go through this, because this hard drive was verified a long time ago. Politico didn't verify it. Mac Isaacs was a computer repairman in Delaware. Joe Biden came into his store. Hunter Biden came into his store without any doubt. I would have no doubt, completely consumed by drugs, because I have hundreds of pictures of him walking around his house with no clothes on, smoking dope, or sitting in a closet smoking dope, or which he didn't care he was doing, even though there were minor children that lived in that house. I've got pictures of him driving a car, smoking a crack pipe. That was like 5 days before he swore under oath to get a gun that he wasn't, and the FBI hasn't done anything about that. They've only had it for 2 years, right? Do we really have an FBI anymore? I don't think so. But in any event, let's get back to this. So, when I got it, I began to analyze it. The first thing that I did with my lawyer and with the help of a few other police officers, we verified it ourselves. I mean, I can go through all the things we did. It's all the things everybody else did. It was clearly his. He even had a receipt with his signature on it. And when you looked at it, it clearly was his. And then we checked out a couple of the reporters who may not even know we did it, that he communicated with, to make sure they communicated with that hard drive. We got an expert to verify it. And then we went to the newspapers, and they were scared to do it. The New York Post decided that they'd try, and for 5 or 6 days, they put it through pretty much the same forensic analysis we did, and concluded it was 100% legitimate. And then they put out the first of the stories, which was the real critical one, which was that the whole thing that Joe didn't know about Ukraine was a complete lie. He knew all about it. He met with the people from the Ukraine. He had dinner with the people from the Ukraine. Blinken knew all about it. There's a whole treasure trove. I mean, might not be bad to go through this on Blinken and get him thrown out of the State Department. I mean, he's deeply involved in that Burisma thing. He's even deeply involved in violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And I kind of see that as kind of poetic justice. I mean, they raided my apartment over alleged violations of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. My God, they had one sitting right in the laptop or the laptop they have and the hard drive I was offering them. They don't have one, got about 20. Now, one of them involves Tony Blinken not one, four involve Tony Blinken, I believe. But one is the best. The one that's the best is when they bring Hunter Biden in through the back door so nobody will see him. That might even show consciousness of guilt. What do you think? In any event, not a big loss if we get rid of you, Tony. So I get it. Make it clear that I have it. Here's a letter on October 15th, that's way back in 2020, from Congressman Biggs and a group of other United States congressmen to Christopher Wray, whose basic role as director of the FBI is to cover things up. Well, not investigate crimes. I mean, they blew the 70 young gymnasts who were raped, right? They're covering that one up. They sure blew the Gabby investigation, huh? Not following the guy who's the clear suspect. I mean, the only ones they get excited about are, I don't know, if you said the guy like worked for Trump, they might have put some resources into it. So Congressman Biggs writes him a letter, and he says, it looks like you guys had this computer way back in December of 2019, right before the U.S. Senate tried the impeachment case. And it looks like the hard drive might well, or the computer might well create evidence that Hunter was peddling his influence of his father to land lucrative jobs overseas, and that one of them was Ukraine. And that would have been very relevant evidence to exonerate the president. And your failure to do it is a severe violation of trust. And he wanted answers to three questions. One, was the FBI in possession of the laptop and hard drive that was documented in the New York Post article? Number two, did the FBI take any steps to authenticate the laptop, hard drive, and data that was uncovered? And number three, did anyone at the FBI brief officials of the Department of Justice or the White House about this laptop or hard drive at any point since December of 2019? I think this would be a good time to take a pause. I accomplished a lot in 2020, exposing the truth, establishing the relationship with you, working tirelessly for America. And I came to know the work and value of the people at American Hartford Gold. You see, you buy gold not only for what you know, but you buy gold for what you don't know. American Hartford Gold is the company you can trust when it comes to buying gold. They sell physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside of your IRA. In the precious metals industry, they are the highest rated firm in our country with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. Give them a call and tell them Rudy sent you. And be sure to ask them what I bought. And if you call them right now, they will give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. Folks, these are uncertain times. The one thing you can count on to protect what you have worked so hard for is physical gold and silver. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 833-GOLD-777. That's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Again, that's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. And fourth, why did the New York Post have the information about this laptop and hard drive before the American people? Want the answer? Because the FBI is corrupt. That's the answer. Nobody can trust them. The FBI had the entire case against Hunter Biden for a year. They still have it. I've never done anything about it. Entire case against Joe Biden with all the documents, all the testimony. A nice, clean $3 million money laundering, $800,000 going to Joe as vice president. Nice big RICO case, 4 situations. Joe becomes point man in Iraq. $1 billion housing contract for James, his brother. Joe becomes point man in Ukraine, a useless job to Hunter that nets about 8 million, 5 to 8 million. And Joe gets the case fixed for Zlochevsky, the multi-billionaire, crooked, organized crime figure in Ukraine. 3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow. And then untold millions from China. 1.5 commitment put into a private equity fund run by Hunter, the stepson of the vice president, and Whitey Bulger's nephew. Now, the FBI didn't do anything with that. They covered it up. I don't know. I guess I should call Congressman Biggs and find out if he ever got an answer to this letter. But if he didn't, I don't know. I mean, first of all, Ray should be fired. And second, maybe you investigate him. Was he deliberately covering it up? Well, this hard drive, this computer, was verified numerous times. First, my lawyer did it. Then I did it. Then I gave it to the New York Post, and they took 5 to 6 days, asked me thousands of questions, and went and got their own forensic expert to verify it. And by the way, if you look at it and read it, it's Hunter Biden's, and I'll make it even easier for you. They never deny it. And right before it was going to come out from the Post, the lawyer for Hunter Biden calls up Mac Isaacs and says, will you return Hunter Biden's hard drive? We call that an admission. The lawyer's an agent. That's not attorney-client privilege. He didn't say, give me the hard drive that you have back. He wouldn't be entitled to that if it wasn't really his. He said, give me Hunter Biden's hard drive back or his computer back. Sorry, it's been in the hands of the FBI for 1.5 years, and they've been covering up, but I couldn't do much about that. So we put it out. Mr. Isaacs was, I'm not going to say tortured, pretty close to it. He had to give up his business. He had to leave. He was threatened with death. It's just John Paul Mac Isaacs, just trying to do his job as a citizen, which they wouldn't know anything about because they don't care about America. He had it according to the terms of the contract, which are 100% legal. It became his property because the inebriated or addicted Hunter didn't remember he left it there. It's only the third computer he lost, by the way. He lost another one to a psychiatrist and a third one to a Russian prostitute or cross spy. Spy, prostitute, spy, one way or the other. And he tells you about it himself. And that wasn't even on my hard drive. That came out a couple of weeks ago. And then I also pointed out, there's a signed receipt by Hunter Biden. You can go do a handwriting check if you want. Oh, but nobody did that. They wanted to cover up for Joe the Crook. And then on October 19th, 2020, we got all of our great former intelligence chiefs. Jim Clapper, Mike Hayden, bit of a disappointment, Leon Panetta, John Brennan, whoa, Michael Morrell. They're all NSA, CIA. These are the people gathering our intelligence for the last 30 years. These idiots never even looked at the laptop. They don't know what the hell's on it. They never asked me to see it. You know where they pulled this from? You know where they pulled it from. I can't say it. This is bull. One of them I respected. Don't anymore. Nothing Russian about this. There are no data points. There are no Russians involved in this. Wouldn't have a damn thing to do with Russians. I hated Russian communism more than any of these bums. But these guys are suggesting I'm a Russian operative? I'll take my career in government service and the honesty, integrity, and effectiveness of it and put it up against them anytime. particularly Brennan, what did you ever get right? I'm sorry. I knew then why my country is in the trouble that it's in. What a bunch of liars. And no apology. None. No attempt to look at evidence. No attempt to ask questions. It's Russian disinformation, like hell it is. So, just a few days later, the Daily Mail put it through a very extensive scientific analysis done by a gentleman named Robert Graham of Errata Security, who's worked in just about every cybersecurity field imaginable. He used a technology known as domain keys identified mail, and he definitively determined that it was a legitimate hard drive of none other than Hunter Biden. Now, that's a year ago. Politico didn't figure this out 2 weeks ago. They figured it out a year ago. I figured it out a year ago. The New York Post figured it out a year ago. We all figured it out, except the liars. Well, the person who knows the most about this, who can discuss it with you, is the person who wrote the first story about it. She is a remarkable reporter. She probably now knows considerably more about this than I do because she's delved into it. And this is a massive amount of information. And that's Miranda Devine. Miranda's writing a book on it. I'm looking forward to it. But Miranda has spent more time with this hard drive probably now than anyone. So we're now going to interview Miranda and have her tell you her involvement with it and just exactly when was this verified, contrary to what the phony left-wing press is trying to get you to believe. This would be a good time to take a short break. Big tech monitors us, censors us, deplatforms us. Conservatives have been helpless to do anything about it until now. On Getter, you can talk with friends and family and express your political beliefs without fear of Silicon Valley liberals coming after you. Join Getter, the social media platform that supports free speech and opposes cancel culture. Getter is led by former Trump advisor Jason Miller, who saw what big tech did to President Trump and decided to fight back. Getter is the fastest growing social media platform in history, with over 1.6 million users and growing, including prominent conservatives like Mike Pompeo, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Steve Bannon. Join Getter. It's in the App Store, the Google Play Store, and at Getter.com. Longer posts, longer videos, sharper and clearer pictures, and unlike the Silicon Valley oligarchs, Getter will never sell your data. Send a message today, join Getter. It's time to cancel culture. Very, very nice to have you with me, Miranda. And I'm really just want to ask you about these things because there's the impression now that as of a week or 10 days ago, finally, the Hunter Biden hard drive from hell computer was authenticated in part by Politico. And not that it's led to any real interest on the part of the FBI or anybody else, but at least a lot of people now think, well, we kind of owe the New York Post an apology and we owe Giuliani an apology. Could you please explain when at least the New York Post first authenticated it?
Well, that would have been back in October of last year. After you very kindly told us, sent me you and Bob Costello sent me the first little tidbits from the laptop, and then we got the laptop from you. And you and Bob Costello had already done an enormous amount of due diligence. And then we did our own due diligence, and that included contacting and talking to people, other recipients of emails, talking to John Paul MacIsaac, who was the the laptop repair guy in Wilmington, Delaware, who had accepted the laptop from Hunter Biden, some 18 months before, and who had given the laptop to the FBI in December 2019. So, there were many points of reference. And we also spoke to Tony Bobulinski, who was Hunter Biden's former business partner. He'd been involved in a lot of those emails and files that were on the laptop that were so incriminating for the Biden family. And he verified everything and in fact, went even further. So I don't know why there was ever a mystery about it being authenticated. And the fact that Facebook said that they needed to do fact checking and Twitter described the stories and the laptop as hacked material. And then you had those very discreditable former intelligence operatives, 50 of them, led by John Brennan, James Clapper, Leon Panetta, Michael Hayden, etc., who then declared that the laptop looked to them as if it was Russian disinformation in their expert opinion when they didn't even ask. I don't think they asked you. They certainly didn't ask us if they could look at the laptop, if they could actually examine it. They just decided that by remote.
So they without looking at it, without reading it. So did they ever describe what it was about the laptop that said to them it was Russian disinformation? I mean, I don't remember any of it being in Russian, for example.
Well, I mean, it had absolutely nothing to do with Russians. Hunter did leave a laptop with some Russians. Some Russian drug dealers, I think, captured another laptop of his. But he had a lot of very unsavory connections among oligarchs in Moscow,
He did,
which is all documented.
He got the $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife for reasons that they can't explain, and she's a very, very shady character. She's a Putin.
Well, it's sort of obvious from the laptop and other documents that I have that she was paying for getting an American bank account, which was very difficult because there were certain rules and regulations put in place to protect American society from, mafioso style foreigners, oligarchs bringing their money here and preying on Americans and doing bad deeds and laundering their money and committing crimes over here. So there are a lot of rules to stop people like that getting bank accounts, but Devon Archer and friends managed to pull it off. So that was, I guess, the quid pro quo.
I mean, the key thing about it at the time that got Mac Isaacs upset, and then I first focused on because it was the impeachment had just taken place, was the evidence, which actually is pretty prominent. Some of the stuff is pretty hard to find on the hard drive, as only you will reveal when you do your book. But the discussions about Ukraine kind of jump out at you. They're pretty easy to find. So they were the first things that consumed us because Biden had made such a big deal out of the fact, Joe Biden, I didn't know anything about my son's foreign dealings, which always sounded incredible, right? It always sounded, I mean, he took the man with him to China, and the guy comes back with some kind of $1 billion commitment. And they never talk about it, but okay, that's what he said. But the hard drive is filled with materials of him setting up a meeting, the meeting taking place with a Burisma official, the guy thanking him. First they lie about it, then they say it may have taken place. And then, of course, the pictures at Cafe Milano have now come out with Joe meeting with all of them. And it was the most dramatic, and I think most attention was paid to that because the FBI had it. And it was relevant to the impeachment that just took place. It was a complete defense for the President of the United States, their boss. And I see a letter that I discovered from Andy Biggs, Congress, to Wray, asking him to explain it. Now, I bet that's never been answered. How did the FBI keep it when they're listening to this testimony and the hard drive contradicts the whole thing? Can you explain what has happened to the FBI? I mean, in your view of this, we run into them all the time. They have relevant evidence, they keep it, and they stonewall Congress.
Well, look, I mean, you can just look at the track record. That's the only way I can look at it, the track record of the FBI when it comes to Donald Trump. At the top echelons of the FBI, they were actively hostile to Donald Trump and, felt that he was a clear and present danger. Maybe they felt in a misguided fashion that they were being patriotic. I don't know, but they certainly were never going to investigate Joe Biden or anybody to do with his family before the election, because the entire establishment, the media establishment, which I know the best, but also, the legal and law enforcement establishment at the highest echelons, the intelligence establishment, were all aimed towards Joe Biden's victory. Anybody but Trump. They needed to, in their minds, get rid of Donald Trump, and they would break every ethical precept, every law, in fact, to make that happen. And so if it meant turning a blind eye to some relevant evidence to the impeachment, that's what they were going to do. And, as you know, the reason John Paul Mac Isaac tried to reach out to you, and he'd reached out to a number of other Republicans before that. Nobody had responded to him. You and your lawyer, Bob Costello, were the only ones who responded. And he had seen you on television and thought, well, Rudy Giuliani understands what's going on. I've seen what's going on with Ukraine and Burisma on the laptop. He was worried that this was important information that should get to the authorities in order to, derail the impeachment or exonerate President Trump. He is a Republican, but I mean, that's not a crime. And yet the smearing of him has been shocking. He's had to leave his video shop that was so successful. He got only 5-star reviews there in Wilmington. He worked very hard. He's had to go to another state. It's been very difficult for him. I mean, everybody who crosses the Bidens gets their comeuppance. They are punished. And yet Joe Biden has been, doing this influence peddling scheme for his entire career. He's dragooned now his son into it, put his drug-addicted son in front of gushing torrents of money. And, we know from the emails on the laptop that Hunter complained to his daughter at one point about having to give half his salary to his father. We also know, I found a lot of receipts and bills and emails on the laptop, which show that Hunter was paying basically for the maintenance and upkeep on one of Joe's mansions in Wilmington, in Greenville, outside of Wilmington. And, he built this magnificent house on a lake. He says he's the poorest man in Congress, but this house is fit for a king. It is beautiful. I mean, it really is beautiful. It's on a pond, I guess you call it, but he calls it a lake. And it's stunning. But of course, a house like that is very expensive to maintain. And who was paying for that? Hunter was. He was paying for I found one cell phone that Hunter was paying the bills for. So Hunter was paying for the family. You saw all the money that was sloshing into Jim Biden's bank account, Joe's brother, from Hunter Biden. Hunter was supposed to go out and make these inflated salaries, do these deals, collect millions of dollars from foreign oligarchs and foreign governments like the Chinese government, and then he was supposed to disperse that to the rest of the family, and he did so. But what kind of a father does that to a son who's a drug addict?
Well, Miranda, that's what I call a RICO case. The racketeering statute was written for that purpose. It was written to prosecute ongoing groups of people who organize and commit crimes as if they were a business. And they commit one after another. In this case, the product of this business was Joe Biden's influence. That was their very valuable commodity. And part of it is proven by the fact that who would pay any money for Hunter? I mean, why would you pay? Why? Go back to the Ukrainian one, which you spend the most time on. Zlochevsky, Mykola Zlochevsky, is one of the shrewdest, smartest, toughest, meanest men in Ukraine. He was the minister of ecology, and he gave himself all the best properties in Ukraine, stole it from the other oligarchs while he was the minister. He then left government when his Russian, it was a Russian, pro-Russian government. When they got thrown out, he ran away with his company, which he put in Cyprus, which was worth about $20 billion. and he had $5 billion in cash of his own. The new government were enemies, Poroshenko, and he was afraid that Poroshenko would take the whole thing away from him. Joe Biden gets appointed point man. Ukraine has $800,000 in the bank. Joe Biden runs Ukraine, not Poroshenko. So good old Zlochevsky goes right to Joe Biden and John Kerry. That's who he thought he was buying. And he says, I got the vice president and the secretary of state, and if that Poroshenko comes after me, I got Biden to take care of him, and I'll take his drug-addicted son who was just thrown out of the Navy. And this guy, Devin Archer, is pretty smart. I mean, I'll get him too. And he pays them really $86,000 a month per person, which is almost $2 million a year for a while, until Devin gets arrested. That money is not intended. Zlochevsky would have to have been stupid to pay that money to Hunter Biden. Just like the mayor of Moscow's wife would have been stupid to pay it to Hunter Biden. Just like the Chinese, and we don't have time for the Chinese, we'll do that another time. But I mean, the big money came from the Chinese for years. And the Chinese are not, funding to the tune of millions and millions of dollars a drug addict. They got other reasons for doing it. So when does your book come out?
November 30, Mayor. I have a date and can't wait. And I will get you a copy as soon as. And I promise,
if there are things you want to leave for the, for the opening, and I will keep my mouth shut when I read it. It could be hard. Dr. Maria Ryan will have to give me something, where I forget it. You're going to probably have some things in there. People don't realize, you and I are among a few people, how big that thing is. And how difficult it is, because there isn't like a narrative that tells you you're going from this subject to that. All of a sudden, it takes about 3 or 4 times to realize what subject you're in. And then you have to reorganize it and you have to look at it. It's a very, very painstaking process.
It's like, I likened it, because I spent months doing it, like mining. There's a few diamonds on top, but then you get into the really hard rock and you have to just drill and drill and drill, and you get a speck of dust, a speck of a gem. And but the gems that are there are unbelievable.
Many more than I was able to get to, because Bernie Carrick, myself, and Bob Costello did most of the review. But we only had a month to do it, and we had to go right out with the most important ones, because I thought it was a tragedy the American people didn't have this. Sometimes, Miranda, I feel guilty. I said, I wish I could have gotten the rest of it to them. But I did. I put it out online. I gave it to John Solomon. Eventually, after we gave it to you, we gave it to the Daily Mail, and they eventually put it out. I put it out on podcasts. We tried everything we could. Time to take a short break. How much equity do you have in your home? 50,000, 100,000, more? Cybercrime experts are alerting homeowners that the more equity you have, the greater the chance foreign and domestic criminals will come after you. Title theft is one of the fastest growing crimes. Home Title Lock, America's leader in home title protection, is alerting homeowners they could already be a victim and not know it. Here's how it goes down. First, cyber thieves search hundreds of public databases for high equity homes. Next, they pull your home's title that's online. They forge your signature stating you sold your home, and they take out loans using your equity. You're not covered by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. Protect your most valuable asset. Register your address now to see if you're already a victim and receive a complete title history of your home. A $100 value free. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. That's HomeTitleLock.com.
You did a remarkable job, Mayor. In those early days, you really got the eyes of, especially the Ukraine stuff, which was so relevant to Joe Biden's honesty, because he had said that he had nothing to do with Hunter Biden's business. And the emails that you provided, that pointed us to, that we already had the laptop that you gave us, but the emails you pointed us to, which you'd spent a month digging out and figuring out, they were crucial to Joe Biden's honesty. And, 10% for the big guy showed he was being paid. Tony Bobulinski then backed that up separately for us. And just the fact that I eventually found that meeting with the Ukrainian benefactor of hunters and Joe Biden. I found that was not just occurred in Washington, and it happened in a dinner at Cafe Milano um, in a private room. And it wasn't just the Ukrainian, it was the Russians, it was the Kazakhstanis. It was a sort of a 3-for-1 deal as far as Hunter was concerned. He had 3 of his sort of foreign oligarch benefactors, family benefactors, meet with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's campaign lied about that. Joe Biden lied about it. And then they changed their tune. After I ran a story with the incontrovertible evidence that the Cafe Milano dinner did take place in Hunter's own words, where he was organizing it. And the thank you letters afterwards from various people who were there. Then the fact checkers at the Washington Post got stuck in, even though they found nothing wrong with our story, but they then gave it context by contacting the White House, who refused to answer any questions from us. And they admitted, yes, that Joe Biden was there, but he just popped in for a few minutes, and only for religious reasons, to meet a priest, a Greek Orthodox priest who was there as a fig leaf. The whole thing is ridiculous, and they get away with it. They get away with this stream of lies. And I'm hoping that when the book comes out, the evidence is so overwhelming and the narrative is so piles on top of pile. I mean, even when I was writing it, I would have to step away from my desk, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And it's only when you write it that you understand all the links, and how Hunter Biden and his bumbling uncle were right in the center of some of the most powerful geopolitical forces, these tectonic shifts in power dynamics between Russia and China and the United States. And Hunter and Jim Biden are like naive, bumbling fools in the middle of it all. It's insane.
Yeah, and selling Joe's office, selling his name. And ultimately, the thing that drove me is selling the vice presidency of the United States. I mean, just what do those people think of us in that country? We go to Ukraine and we preach corruption, no corruption. And they laugh at us and say, well, your guy was more corrupt than any of us. I mean, I've had that told to me in Ukraine. And remember, Miranda, before I ever saw the hard drive, I had already had testimony from 30 witnesses. I had a paper proof of a $3.4 million money laundering by Hunter in which Joe got $800,000. And I had Ukrainian prosecutors telling me for 8 years or 6 years, they've been trying to get their hands on 2 bank accounts, offshore bank accounts, that they were convinced had money that was going to Joe. And it was our Treasury Department that stopped them. And even with Trump in office, we couldn't get the Treasury Department to lift it. And every time I wanted to bring them over to the United States, these people who were government officials of the Ukraine, who basically said that Joe Biden got a bribe from Zlochevsky to fix the case with Poroshenko. And then Poroshenko got a bribe of $50 million. They're willing to testify to this. I have it all recorded. And I gave it in good faith. I gave it to the State Department. They buried it. And then I gave it to the U.S. Attorney's Office a year before the election. The U.S. Attorney was very excited about it. And 3 weeks later, he lost interest in the case. And it was
why?
They weren't going to. I mean, I never believed this. You told me this 5 years ago. The deep state, it exists, and it's worse than I thought. They were getting Trump out of office, no matter how. They tried last time. I mean, the first time they tried to get him out with the whole Russian collusion scheme, which started before the election. They thought they were going to get him out with the whole scheme that took place. I guess they revealed it on August something when Manafort got bribes, and they were going to link Trump to that. And there's a lot of testimony from Ukrainian witnesses that they helped to get the evidence for that, and one piece of it was doctored. And then it blew up. I mean, he demonstrated his 9 lives, Teflon Trump. And that's when Peter Strzok says, there's no there. And she says, how, but we're going to stop them. And if we don't stop them, we have an insurance plan. And the insurance plan was the Mueller investigation. I mean, it tracks perfectly. And he kept frustrating them. They impeached him twice. And I mean, the only way they could do it is doing, and now the last hope they had of ruining him was the January 6th thing, make it into an insurrection so people will never want him back. And that is turning out to be a bad thing, but my goodness, no guns fired except the poor woman who was killed, who was a Trumper, right?
Yes.
For no reason.
Yeah.
And no insurrection.
No one's been charged with insurrection. The FBI's even admitted there was no insurrection.
FBI's even admitted there was no plan or conspiracy.
Yes.
That was the last one. And now he's ahead of Biden 51-41. So I'm warning him, they're going to come after you again. Right?
Oh, of course, they'll never let up.
There's a reason, and that there's plenty of time to discuss that, why he's such a threat to them. This scheme that you're uncovering is not confined just to Joe Biden. Lots of other people made money in Ukraine, and they're sitting very high on the top of the American government. And if that ever opens
China.
up... China worse, 100%. Well, I'm looking forward to the book, but you got to do 3 more after that.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot.
Thank you, Miranda. What went on here is probably, could be one of the worst crimes at the highest levels of our government. It's very, very depressing that we've come to this. We've got to clean it up. We want our country back. This has to be cleaned up. And we're not going to stop. It's all there. It's in black and white and color. It'll be there forever. Can't run away from it. Well, there's Rudy Giuliani. Remember, this is a country, it's the greatest country on earth. But it's our obligation to keep it that way. Liberty doesn't come for free. You got to fight for it, and you got to defend it. God bless America. And I'll see you in a few days.